Today we're going to be discussing Lyme's disease, which is actually the sixth most common disease in the United States according to the CDC. Let us first dive into the history of Lyme's disease, where it got discovered, and how it got discovered. Lyme's disease was first discovered in Lymes, Connecticut, which is how it got its name. Now, in the early 1970s, there were a lot of people, adults and children, who started showing symptoms of Lyme's disease but went undiagnosed because they had no idea what it was. In 1975, Alan Steer recognized Lyme's disease as an official disease. However, people still didn't understand where they were getting it or where it came from. And in the 1980s, that all changed when Willy Burgdorfer was studying ticks, and he then linked ticks with the bacteria that causes Lyme's disease. And because of this, he was recognized and they named the bacteria after him. So today we know the bacteria as Borrelia burgdorferi. And today there are over 300,000 cases of Lyme's disease each year in the United States. Now, to understand Lyme's disease, we have to understand the biology behind the bacteria that causes Lyme's disease. Now, Borrelia burgdorferi is a spirochete, meaning that it has a spiral shape. And this picture right here shows that spiral shape. In order to see this under a microscope, a dark field microscope is needed. A dark field microscope takes light and angles it in a specific way where you see a light specimen on a dark background, which is what this picture shows right here. Now, an interesting fact about Borrelia burgdorferi is its shape of chromosomes. It keeps a linear shape, which is really unusual for bacteria because bacteria will normally keep a circular shape or a spherical shape. And a really important aspect to this bacteria is that it lives as parasites off of its hosts. It feeds also off of the blood of different mammals, which are infected with this bacteria, and that's how these ticks then get that bacteria and are able to transmit them to humans. Now, this picture right here shows just a basic structure. It shows that this bacteria has an inner and outer membrane, a periplasmic space, and really importantly, endoflagella. This endoflagella is responsible for propelling the bacteria in a corkscrew-like motion, which is actually super beneficial to the bacteria because it is then able to guard itself or hide itself from its host. And this picture right here shows the life cycle of a tick and how it transmits the bacteria. Now, it just shows basically in a host, an adult tick will have its eggs, and the eggs will then become larvae. The larva will feed off of hosts. Then that larva becomes a nymph, which is an undeveloped, not fully grown tick yet, and those are the ones that are most common in spreading this bacteria. Those nymphs will feed off of its hosts, turn into adults, and those adults will feed off of its hosts and mate again, and it keeps going. So we can see how this bacteria just keeps on going in the same cycle due to its hosts and its reservoirs. And these ticks transmit this disease to humans, and what they do is they will be waiting on grass or bush or whatever they're waiting on. They keep their back feet on that and they latch their front feet and they grab onto somebody who's passing by or brushing, like brush up against the bush, they can latch on. Another important aspect to this bacteria is that it does also have proteins that help with its virulence, and they've named those proteins OSPA through OSPF. Now, where are these black-legged ticks found? Where do people get Lyme's disease? The answer is in a lot of different places, but the most common 4 places is the US, the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Upper Midwest. Now, Lyme's disease does not affect any race, any gender, any age more than another. It really is just people who are more at risk are those who are outdoors more, those who like spending time outdoors, because that's where you get bitten by a tick. Now, it does take 36 to 48 hours to transmit the disease from the tick to the person. So if you do catch it in time, then you might be fine. However, nymphs, which are the most common ticks to spread this bacteria, those are the undeveloped ticks. They're only 2 millimeters and sometimes smaller. This picture just shows the 4 different, from larva to nymph, and then it shows you male and female. But this picture right here actually shows you tick sizes on a finger. And you can see the nymph is this second one right here. And you can see how tiny it is and how hard it really would be to see on your body unless you're really checking super thoroughly. Now, symptoms. Symptoms of this disease is fatigue, headache, chills, fever. Obviously, those symptoms are not always right away linked with Lyme's disease because it can be linked with other diseases too, right? The flu or anything else. Those are common symptoms. However, a huge sign that is directly linked to Lyme's disease is an erythema rash, which happens in 80% of people who do get this disease, or 4 out of 5 people, and it has a bullseye-like appearance, which is shown in this picture right here. Wherever you were bitten, it's really dark red with a ring around it, which looks like the bullseye. If you do let these symptoms go untreated for longer than 30 days, symptoms will get really bad and increasingly worse. You'll get a lot of pain in tendons and joints, bones, your neck, even arthritis, and in some cases even facial palsy, where you lose movement in half your face and like that side can droop. So this is something you really don't want to let go untreated for a long time. You really want to just catch this early on. Now, treatments, people are diagnosed mostly just off of visual appearance, off of that bullseye appearance, off of symptoms. They do have lab studies that test for antibodies, but that isn't commonly used. It can be used, it's just not as common as just being diagnosed based off of the signs. Antibiotics is the main treatment that is given to people. It's been used since the 1980s and it continues to be used because it's been so successful. And antibiotics will get rid of the symptoms in about 2 to 4 weeks. However, there is a few percentage of people who end up with PD-LDS, which basically means when people are done with the antibiotics, they still can show symptoms for up to 6 months. And researchers don't understand why this happens in this few percentage of people. It can be more likely to occur in people who let this go untreated for a longer time, but they're not really sure why. This graph right here says that 10% of people who are diagnosed and treated for Lyme's disease will experience PLDS. So this just shows 1 out of 10 people will get PTLDS. However, there are a lot of different researches on that percentage, and that does change here and there. Some people say 8%, some people say 6%, but the main point is it's a low percentage of people. Prevention. Prevention is huge, and there are a lot of things you can do to prevent yourself from getting bitten by a tick and therefore getting Lyme's disease. Awareness is important because that's what allows you to be cautious. For example, walking on a pathway. If you're hiking, you walk on a pathway, you don't go off in the bushes where a tick is waiting to latch onto you, right? In addition, wearing protective clothing, as this girl is in this how to prevent tick bites picture. She's wearing a long sleeve and pants, which basically decreases your chance of tick to skin contact, so decreases your chance of getting bitten. As well as spraying insect repellent to keep them away. And when you get home, you should shower. You could always, sometimes that might rinse off the tick before it can transmit the bacteria. And always check yourself for ticks when you get back from your adventure. Like I said, they're really tiny, and this says to always check your groin, neck, ears, and back of knees, because those ticks like to hide in the little tiny places. So you really want to just check yourself thoroughly, not just a quick scan over. So in summary, Lyme disease can happen from just one tick bite. It does occur from the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi, and this bacteria is successful due to its proteins that factor in virulence and its hosts and reservoirs from those ticks that feed off of those mammals and transmit it to the humans, and how easily they transmit it. It is an easy transmission for ticks. It is important to catch this early on. This is not something you want to let go untreated for a long time. Treatments are available, and for the most part, they help heal the symptoms in 2 to 4 weeks. And always be aware so that you can prevent yourself from getting bitten by a tick and getting Lyme's disease. Thank you.